Welcome everyone to another edition of Drunk Agile. We'll start with Nisha in the background, just excited as always, just jumping off her pillow, at the thought of, yeah. With me, with Nisha is her, I don't know, what would you call you? What would you call your relationship with Nisha? I don't know.
Her butler?
Yeah, there you go, yeah. Her minion maybe?
Yeah,
Yeah.
minion. Prateek Singh.
Hi, Prateek. And with us tonight, we are so lucky to have the man, the myth, the legend, Yuval Yeret. Yuval, say something about yourself.
Hey, Dan. It's awesome to be here. I've heard so much good stuff about this podcast.
If you don't know anything about,
couldn't be higher.
Yeah.
It could only go downhill. About myself. I don't know, some people used to call me Mr. Kanban Israel. Doesn't make that much sense now that I've been out of Israel for 6 years now. But I am doing a lot with Kanban, doing a lot with Scrum, Safe, trying to make sense of all of these different options, trying to help people make sense of these different options, trying to avoid all the artillery going on in between different walls. Sometimes even trying to make peace together with you, Dan and Prateek, between these walls. So that's what I've been up to, trying to be now.
That's actually a good segue into what we want to talk about tonight. But before we get into that, of course, we need to talk about what we're drinking. So Yuval, since you're our guest, would you like to start us off? What are you drinking tonight?
I'm drinking Four Roses. Let me turn off the virtual background. We don't need that.
No.
Hard to see what we're drinking with that going on. So, sort of sour Four Roses.
All right. So whiskey sour. Do I see a cherry?
That's a cherry. Tell me that's a black cherry, please.
A black cherry.
Is it black cherry?
Italian Monicino cherries.
Okay,
whatever.
good. Yeah.
Okay. No, those we allow.
Yeah, because if it was anything else, we'd have to kick. We would just kick you off the.
We would have to stop right here.
You would leave. Right. Okay.
Only the real thing.
Yeah.
And what do I have there? Some sort of bitters, fire bitters.
Oh no. Hopefully Steve Reed isn't watching this. Prateek, what are you drinking?
I have this brand new bottle of FLD that somebody hand bottled and brought for me. I don't remember the name of that guy, but 57.7%. That's just all right. It was actually bottled almost exactly a month ago.
Yeah, it's got a hint of smoke to it, I think.
Yeah, it does.
It's just on the finish, which is not too bad. I told these guys I'm totally chickening out tonight. I just literally, I think 15 minutes ago got off the tennis court. So it's water for me, trying to rehydrate. The age statement on this water is about 5 minutes ago. So I apologize to the viewers who are hoping to see me drink something interesting. It's just water for tonight. So
all drinking, so we're good.
Okay, so Yuval, I mean, cheers everybody, cheers. So some of you probably don't know about Yuval. He was, I think it's fair to say, he was one of the very first, maybe the first in the international community to really kind of pick up and adopt Kanban, and kind of spread it outside of where it started. And as he said, he's had he's been in all communities. He's been in the Scrum community. He's been in the Safe community. So tell us maybe just maybe at a high level first, and then we can drill down. What's exciting to you, Yuval, about the intersection of all those things? Kanban, Scrum, Safe. What's going on that's good that we should all know about?
I think if you look at them the right way, through the right prism, to use Prateek's shirt, they look very similar. But if you look through the wrong prism, they look so different to people. And it's beautiful when people see the connection, and it's stuff you need to get drunk about the rest of the time when people abuse each and every one of these things and doesn't really see the connection to other things.
Well, one of the impetuses for this particular call, getting Yuval on our show, number one, because I mean we've known Yuval forever, and it's actually been too long. We should have had him on much earlier. But number two, we did have a little bit of discussion about where SAFe was going in terms of their flow metrics, and maybe specifically, I don't know, you know better than I do. I mean, are they, were story points ever part of SAFe? Was that, or have they dropped that officially? I mean, because that's starting to be kind of that fertile ground of where religious wars pop up, I think, is when people are looking at it through the wrong lens. So I don't know, can you say something about those things, Yuval?
Yeah. So originally, similar to the Scrum world, to be honest, it's very similar to the picture we were seeing in the Scrum world when we were, starting to go around and pitch Scrum with Kanban to Scrum.org. I think the situation in the SAFe world is kind of similar. There's a lot of story points in the gospel, in the Scaled Agile framework. But some practitioners are starting to see the light. I would see that due to the kind of organizations that implement SAFe and the kind of practitioners that look at SAFe, it's a bit behind the curve. It's, I'd compare it to where Israel is when it comes to COVID vaccines compared to where the US. The SAFe is like the US. It's taking its time. I'm hoping it will accelerate eventually and pass, but Israel is on the bleeding edge. Kanban practitioners have been on the bleeding edge of a lot of the better ways, better realizations about how to think about metrics, how to think about work, being more principle driven. I think it's getting into the SAFe world. The fact that, SAFe practitioners are pointed towards Reinertsen's work around flow and in the principles, the SAFe principles read like a table of contents of principles of product development flow. They really do. You open it up and you see the chapters, right? And Dean Leffingwell is upfront about it. He cherishes, he admires Reinertsen's work and wants as many people as possible to be exposed to it. But there's still a lot in SAFe that is inspired by, let's call it the Mike Cohen style of Agile that resonates a lot with people that come from the project management, from PMI, PMP background, and these people are looking for control and find that control in story points, even in tasking. So it's definitely part of the SAFe story right now. I wrote about using SAFe without story points at the team level a couple of years ago. I haven't looked at how popular that blog post is. I imagine it's not one of, it's not a bestseller. Let's put it like that. But I'm hopeful, maybe someday. So it's still part of SAFe. I don't think that you'll lose your SAFe license if you start to use no estimates at the team level. But there's no clear guidance to teams on how to actually go about do that as part of the formal framework, because it's a bit avant-garde for the people that are currently implementing SAFe. That's the state of things right now. There are conversations, by the way, around should Agile teams practicing SAFe use tasks and detailing the items in the iteration or sprint backlog. We're going back and forth with on that. There's been progress made a couple of years ago when, the language changed to some teams use, detailing or tasking in these sort of situations. Now, it's kind of reverted to many teams use tasking in the, in the framework, and we're working, I'm an SPCT, a SAFe Program Consultant Trainer. We're kind of a small group, not more than 100 people worldwide. And we're trying, some of us are trying to convince SAI to, be more on the some teams do that. This is where it might be useful maybe, but it's not a must, and think about whether you really need that, especially if you're using Kanban to visualize the flow on this Agile team. And a lot of these tasks are just inherently modeled as part of your definition of workflow. So 2 steps back, 1 step forward. That's the dance of getting more Kanban, real Kanban thinking into the framework, which I think it's fair, right?
Yep.
We always need to see, what's the legacy? What are people used to? What's the value of, talking about no estimates or no tasking as part of the framework? What's the cost to get that message across? What's the ROI on making that change versus another change? So it's become a big ship, and it's hard to change the legacy there. That's the story, I think.
Prateek, I'm going to let you jump in here in just a second, but I just want to quick apologies to our viewers. Yuval said avant-garde. I don't know if you heard. He said avant-garde there. That's a bit highbrow for us. We like to keep it a little bit more in the gutter. So apologies for if any viewers got offended by by that hoity-toity language of Yuval. So. Prateek.
Yeah, no, I was going to jump in, and I think Yuval, as you're explaining that evolution that at least you're trying to effect, and a bunch of you are trying to effect within SAFe, it's promising, and especially SAFe releasing those flow metrics, a set of metrics that are more centered around flow. It's very promising because SAFe has become such a big vehicle to carry these things forward in so many places. The more flow metrics make their way into the official SAFe charter, the more people think about that stuff. And yeah, I think it could be very powerful.
Yeah, SAFe is at the program portfolio level, but I think Scrum is at the team level, right? People associate Scrum with Agile. People associate SAFe with Agile. I think it's kind of the de facto. So
yeah, a recent state of the Agile world quoted something like 37% of people use SAFe as their scaling approach. So it's definitely, if we want to affect change in the Agile world, this is one of the most important vehicles to affect change in. It might be hard because it's so popular and so established, but we keep trying.
All right, so let's talk about some actionable things that we can do there. Because we've got Yuval and I, you heard him allude to it. We've got a bit of a history in trying to build these bridges. We went and we worked with Scrum.org to build the Scrum with Kanban class, which up until Pro Kanban came along, which we'll talk about Pro Kanban in just a second. I would argue the Scrum with Kanban class was the best Kanban class on the planet, even though it was technically about Scrum. And to your point, Yuval, it's really the same thing. It's silly. We talked about that till we were blue in our face. Now Pro Kanban's come along. Trying to get that community. So I'm really interested in your thoughts in terms of how we continue to build these bridges. Because I think we've got a lot more. Historically, it has been a bit of us versus them. How do we get rid of that attitude, and how do we start working, amongst these communities to make things better, solve problems?
So one thing that I've been trying to do is to get Scrum trainers, and maybe we need to do the same with some Kanban trainers, to learn about SAFe from the right perspective. So I've had, each SAFe class that I run, there's 1 or 2 Scrum trainers or Agile coaches there, people from Scrum.org, people that are now trainers in Pro Kanban. And I hope that they're getting an interesting perspective on SAFe, similarly to how people that attended our professional Scrum with Kanban classes that came from a hardline Scrum perspective got a taste for, the value of Kanban and how it's actually one of the more powerful ways to think about work and improve your Scrum. So that's something I'm trying to do. One thing. I think we need to keep writing. I think we need to keep giving examples of how to use things like Kanban and the right flow metrics to help, safe teams. I recall, a couple of conversations that we've had then where we were thinking about how do we take some of the flow metrics and tell some stories around how they could be used not just by teams, but how to use them at the team of teams, the agile release train, or the portfolio level. I think there's potential there. Monte Carlo forecasting, which is a related aspect, could probably be very interesting to people that are looking for building confidence around roadmaps and capacity planning and those kind of discussions that are very popular in the safe world, and would benefit from the rigor that the right sort of Monte Carlo forecasting would provide. But I think in order to do that, we should put a hold on our I wouldn't call it criticism, because criticism is good, but disdain for safe. A lot of trainers in the Kanban and Scrum community aren't willing to touch safe with a pole, right?
Yeah, rightly or wrongly, whether you agree with safe or not, safe provides an answer that, for the most part, Scrum does not and Kanban does not. Scrum by definition, Scrum really doesn't look beyond the team level, and that's not I'm not saying that's a deficiency of Scrum. That's just how the framework was designed. Same thing with Kanban. We're talking about Kanban really comes at it from a principled perspective. So there's nothing in Kanban that's going to say, this is how you should be agile at the portfolio level. Although you could easily apply Kanban at the portfolio level. This is what what Klaus Leopold and others are doing with the whole flight levels thing. My point is, rightly or wrongly, SAFe filled that gap. Right. And, I think it'd be stupid of us to kind of stick our heads in the sand and say, oh, SAFe is the devil. We don't want anything to do with that, because it's ruining Agile. Well, that train has sailed. So
I think it will ruin Agile if the wrong people would be at the forefront. If the right people would be in the forefront and helping implement SAFe and make SAFe better, it will be a different story. The same could be said by the way about Scrum
and Kanban.
If the wrong people, yeah.
That has probably been said about Kanban for the past 10 years. Although we're not going to go there. We're not talking about that tonight.
Let's not go there.
We're talking about what we're not.
Prateek,
your theme of today. There's a list of things we're not talking about.
Yeah, take a drink. Prateek, you were going to jump in and say something.
I was going to say that I am pretty sure just in the comments in this video, there will be a whole bunch of things about but safe is of the devil, and there will be that disdain. But at the same time, I think we kind of have to realize the fact that 37%. That's what you said. 37% of the practitioners are probably in some sort of some phase of implementation of SAFe. It probably behooves us to kind of understand it better and go.
Yellow card to you too, Prateek. Behoove? What is going on here?
It's the Aberfeldy. Usually I say that stuff and you're drinking, so you don't catch on to it.
Oh, that's true. It's not fun being the only sober one on Drunk Agile, everyone.
Yes,
just gonna throw that out there. Sorry, go ahead. I cut you off.
Lesson.
I'm sorry, Prateek, I cut you off.
We're willing to pause and let you grab some.
Yeah. but the base idea is that SAFe is out there. It's being implemented by a lot of people. It cannot be a thing of we just keep people outside of SAFe keep fighting SAFe. It has to be one of the things of let's figure out how we can work with folks like Yuval to kind of bring our ideas and make it better, hopefully affect some change in that in that big framework that's being used.
Yeah. Let's take, for example, story points again, right? You asked about story points in SAFe. So I think there's one thing to say, you know what? We go into SAFe with a big eraser and we get rid of all story points in SAFe. And we go in with your, your story, your white paper about what was his name? The NFL coach.
Oh, the don't be a ditka. Yeah.
Don't be a ditka story, and tell these people, go burn your WSJF. Don't prioritize. I mean, that's going to be a fun conversation, right? To a point.
It always is.
Yeah, it always is. But I'm not sure that that's, where we should go right now. So to be more concrete, what I'm trying to say to people about story points in SAFe is I'm telling them, listen, we have tons of data that shows that at the team level, once you right size the work, just make sure it fits well into your sprint. The predictability that you get based on counting items and looking at throughput is much better than, what you get from using story points and getting velocity. But don't trust me, try it out and see, okay? Do story points for a while, but also count, look at, the graphs and see which graph is more stable, right? More under control. Make up your own mind. Assuming that you really make an effort to right-size items, which is what you should be focusing on anyhow. But there's another conversation, which is, for example, in SAFe, there's PI planning, okay? Program increment planning, the thing you do every 8 to 12 weeks, let's say every quarter, you look at the next couple of sprints, you try to figure out what's gonna fit in, what's not gonna fit in, let's, look at dependencies across the teams. Do I really need to right-size all of the items in order to do PI planning? That would be a waste, right? So do I do it just by counting items, even though the items that are gonna go into the back end of this quarter or PI are probably bigger, less refined? It's gonna be hard for me to convince even myself that that's a good way to plan, okay? So something that I feel more comfortable with is to say, for the sprint or iteration level, don't do story points. Just right-size items and just count them. Use throughput. That's good enough. Convince yourself that it's probably good enough. When it comes to looking beyond the iteration, when it comes to planning a program increment or doing WSJF, doing the prioritization process, which you will do, right? You will look at, somehow you look at the cost of delay of something. That's probably not that accurate, but you'll do it at some level. And you look at the cost of something, probably not accurate either, not more accurate or less accurate than your cost of delay, but you're doing something in order to have that conversation and get to some shared understanding of what to do next. Let's have something that basically looks at the weight of those features or bigger stories that aren't sprint ready yet. The way I like to do it is to ask, how many stories do I think this will eventually become? So I'm thinking this looks like something that, we did in the past and eventually became 13 things. Yeah, let's put a 13 on it. Do we think it's something that will eventually become 20, 5, 40, whatever? Let's put some number on it. It's fine. We're using it for now. We're using it for forecasting. We're using it for longer term planning. We're not going to use, when we get to the point that we're actually pulling these things into an iteration, let's just make sure that we right size them. So for me, that's a pragmatic approach that has a chance of sticking in the safe world. For most other no estimates practitioners, and I'm even seeing you kind of, that's not really how we look at things, right?
Well,
you know, some no estimates people, I'm sure Duarte is not liking what I'm saying right now. So, but I think it's the pragmatic, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, the pragmatic compromises that we need to make. Now, on this specific issue, I know where, we have our arguments even on whether you do need to have no estimates all the way, even to the big rocks, or does it make sense to have some sort of estimate for the bigger rocks? So we're allowed to have our arguments. That's what makes life fun.
I imagine Prateek, you and I are going to say the same thing. You go. But
no, well, what I was going to say was, I think what you're talking about is bringing those teams that are so entrenched in doing detailed estimates to the next level, where they don't need to do the detailed estimates at the team level, but still need to do some sort of estimation at the program level. And even if we make that shift, then we can start having the conversation of, even is that necessary? Like, as you said, we have certain differences in the way we look at it, but at least that opens up the space for that conversation to happen. And then maybe if we get to the point that we understand, oh, we don't need to do that, then we can try that with a few teams as well.
Yeah, I mean, this. I was going to go with the shameless plug of Prateek, your Rain Man. You have to tell us what episode it is, but I think it was 2 episodes ago.
It was. What are you talking about? The right sizing of the epics?
Yeah. So Yuval, I don't know if you saw. We talked about
that was episode 29.
How to do right sizing of epics when you haven't refined them, when we don't know, how many stories is in this, in this particular item. What's it going to break down to? But yet we still need a plan for it. Because
you don't know how many stories. It's just,
of course, yeah, you don't. Yeah, but
you're guessing. It's all a guessing game, right?
Of course it is. But we can use data to make a little bit more informed guess, or a little bit more informed forecast to aid those conversations. So I bet if we were to sit down and kind of go through that, I would assume that'd be something that would be amenable to at least some of the people in the in the SAFE community. But it's because and
I think we need to write it in such a way, or refer to it in such a way that it will be. And that's on us, right?
Yeah,
that's on us.
Well, that's on you, because I don't know how to talk to you SAFE people. I don't know how to. That's why I'm talking to you, because I don't know.
Dan feels very unsafe.
I don't know the language, But that was like when I first entered the Scrum community. I didn't know what language to use. It's taken me 2 or 3 years, And
Have you learned?
I don't know. I still see people cringe when I talk about Scrum, so maybe not. But I think I'm better. But that's why I think that's the whole point of this episode. That's why these conversations are so important, because it's like learning a brand new language.
Yeah, and I feel like that epic level thing, that PL thing, I think that's going to be now that we're having the conversations of replacing story points with more of the flow metrics. I think in a couple of years, that will be the big conversation of how do we replace this level estimation we've replaced, whatever that upper level estimation, how do we replace that with the other flow metrics that we're gathering? Yeah.
I think the minimum viable step forward is to actually make sure that people at the program level, call it feature in SAFE, call it epic in Jira, whatever, pay attention to these metrics at that level.
Yes.
So for me, something that we're not doing that well in the Kanban world, in whatever world that we're talking in, unless I've been really out of touch recently, is a lot of the metrics are too focused on the team level. And we need to double down on metrics for the higher levels. Metrics at the portfolio level, metrics at the program level. It's basically the same metrics for starters, but there are some interesting things that happen once you start to talk about bigger rocks, right? The cycle times are much longer. Throughput is not as, even. There are some interesting things but I think that's something that we should start to pay attention to. So if we're looking at Jira and collecting some metrics and providing some charts on it using ActionableAgile or whatever, how often are we looking at the Epic Kanban board and doing flow metrics on that versus doing it at the team level, if we're honest about it?
Well, and that's another episode we did, because if we're honest about it, I still think it's every day, or most every day, honestly. But that's a whole other conversation. Prateek, what you were going to say?
Well, I was going to say that, and again, call back to the previous episode, but I would say that level is even more important than the story level, because most of the time customers are expecting features,
Yes,
not stories. So tracking those metrics at the feature level, the epic level, is probably even more important, and figuring out what's causing us to slow down on delivering epics is probably even more important than stories.
and as agile teams mature, the bottlenecks, the delays go beyond the team.
Yep.
You could see a situation where cycle times at the team level look great, but that's not the interesting cycle time. The big delays happen before it even gets to the team at the bigger rock level, epic feature, whatever you want to call it, or after the team is done with something. So managing that value stream is crucial, and I'm glad to hear that you're thinking about it more often these days. You're probably the few ones that do. I'm trying to work with clients to take a look at, set up those Kanban boards, take a look at those kinds of metrics, but it's not at the forefront of everything that, most people look at when they're using Jira, for example.
So speaking of shameless plugs, this is something you and I should talk about offline, Yuval, because I don't know if you've seen, we just released for ActionableAgile what we're calling a portfolio forecaster, which is essentially based on a dashboard that Prateek put together at Ultimate Software. And so it is, how do we track these metrics, and how do we start making decisions? How do we get signals much earlier at that feature level, rather than down at the team
Which,
level?
by the way, if we want to speak the SAFe language, that's not what SAFe portfolio is, right? So if we want to align on language, for SAFe, the program level Kanban is what you use to look at the flow and manage the flow of features. The portfolio Kanban is for epic level initiatives that span multiple features, multiple PIs, maybe even multiple, agile release trains. So just another flight level, just another.
That's what I was gonna say. It's honestly, there's semantics at that point. That sounds the same to me.
Yes, I mean, it's not the same. It's just
I know it's not the same, but
different people. It's not going to change the type of flow metrics that you use.
Yeah.
But if we want to resonate with the SAFe people, we need to use the language that makes sense to them. That's all I'm saying. So
what's it called? What's the level below the portfolio level?
Program. There's actually program and solution, but most likely it's the program. The Agile release train, which is a team of teams.
Okay.
We're actually trying to evolve beyond the name program in SAFe, but we still call it the program Kanban until there's, you can call it the feature Kanban board if you want, but it's not portfolio level. Think of it this way. So portfolio level would be if you have multiple products, systems, team of teams, and you're trying to allocate your budget to those different groups, and each one of them is working on their things, and there are also initiatives that cut across, but they're not really working together on a day-to-day basis. So that's the SAFe language for these things.
Okay.
And I'm actually seeing more and more organizations that find this to be one of the most problematic areas in their work. So I'm seeing more and more organizations where the challenge is that they're trying to spread too thin, work on too many initiatives at the organizational level. Each one of their Agile release trains, which is a team of teams up to 125 people, is working on too many of these initiatives, and a lot of time isn't organized around value. So if you see a situation where too many of your initiatives, too many of your OKRs, if you want to use that language, map to too many Agile release trains, to too many teams of Agile teams, that's probably an indication that you're not organized the right way. That your topology or architecture of your teams doesn't make sense. So that's one thing that you need to take care of. But even if you have the right structure, some teams would span across these different groups, and you need to manage them as well. You need to make sure that there aren't too many things that you're trying to do that cut across the entire organization, the entire portfolio.
Yes, it sounds like portfolio level is that initiatives Kanban board essentially that cuts across multiple teams, possibly multiple programs. Program level is more of that feature level flow.
Exactly.
And below that is the team level with the stories.
Yep, exactly.
At least that's the translation, Dan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm just
Dictionary.
going to be calling all you when I start using this language, but Google Translate. I'll just start calling you guys Google Translate. So we've kind of danced around it. I don't know if we want to actually step on the landmine that is flow metrics and safe, or should we just call that conversation good for now, and just move on from there and maybe wrap up talking about something else. Yuval, I'll leave it up.
Happy to try. I mean, now that we have some alcohol in us, at least some of us.
Well, let's like I said, let's leave it at. I'm absolutely thrilled that it seems like there's a concerted effort to make flow metrics a part of the SAFe framework. I mean, that's, as you were saying earlier, that's at least a step in the right direction.
And if we're thinking about it in agile fashion, the release is version 1, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully it gets better. I would love the opportunity to talk to whoever's making the decisions about incorporating the flow metrics, because as you know, Yuval, I've got some things I'd want to say about what they're choosing.
You've got something to say about flow metrics?
Yeah, I know. Go figure. But like I said, I'm hoping I would be gracious enough to start the conversation with, thank you so much for at least looking at this stuff and considering it to bring it in, because that's where we need to be.
I will talk about something else that is a similar story, but not the same thing. So you've probably heard that some people consider SAFe's approach toward weighted shortest job first and cost of delay to be sacrilegious to how you should be doing these sort of things. Okay. Joshua Arnold from Black Swan Farming would say, this isn't really what Reinertsen had in mind when he was teaching us about cost of delay and weighted shortest job first.
And so actually, can I interrupt you? Because this is another place where I need help with language, because, and this is hopefully for clarification for our viewers out there. Cost of delay is a specific implementation, potentially a specific implementation, or actually I should say CD3 is potentially a specific implementation of weighted shortest job first. It doesn't have to be, but I think where it gets off the rails is, I hear anyway, people using weighted shortest job first and cost of delay interchangeably. And that's where they're not. They're definitely not the same thing. And I would argue that's what Joshua Arnold is railing against.
The way I understand what he's saying is slightly different. But I think both Reinertsen, Joshua Arnold, and SAFe are all saying we need to look at cost of delay divided by duration as our way to do weighted shortest job first. That's my understanding. That's not where the argument is. I think the argument is around how do you calculate cost of delay?
Yes.
And Reinertsen, on one extreme, would say you need to talk to the financial people, you need to open the Excels with everything that's kind of built into the the P&L for your product, and that's, you actually calculate the cost of delay for the different things, and then you compare.
Yep.
Which is probably the right way to do it, because I haven't seen Reinertsen be wrong about anything, and it makes total sense. I've taken the class, I've done the calculations, makes total sense. Not that practical all of the time, very hard, where we should strive. And Reinertsen said that as well.
Yeah.
Joshua Arnold would say, let's draw some, cost of delay curves, classify, whether this looks like this curve, that curve, something along these lines. I'm, grossly simplifying, a workshop that I took too many years ago about that. Beautiful approach, very interesting. It's something I love to do when I get the chance. What Saif is saying is the way we would calculate cost of delay is we would divide it into 3 components. One component would be business user and business value. One component would be time criticality. One component would be the opportunity enablement, the doors this would open, or the combined with the risk reduction, the GDPR kind of risk, regulatory risk, whatever, doors could be slammed in our face if we don't do this. Think, those kind of things that appear in the colored cards in the Kanban games. And let's do some relative estimate of the impact of each one of these or the attributes, each one of these attributes on each one of the things we're considering as part of this prioritization exercise, aggregate that into cost of delay and divide it by the duration, which, there's a lot of arguments against that it's not good enough, that it's not really cost of delay. But what Reinertsen says is the amount of people that are actually aware of cost of delay these days, that are aware of weighted shortest job first, and have started the journey towards doing economic prioritization the right way, is the amount of these people is several orders of magnitude more these days than before, when people had to actually go read Reinertsen's Principles of Flow or go watch Joshua Arnold do his stuff to learn about this. That's the positive way to look at this. And I think the same sort of thinking applies for flow metrics. We're the avant-garde, the bleeding edge, whatever. We have our ideals about what flow metrics should look like. Let's continue to push these ideas, but hopefully within a couple of years, many more people would actually be interested in flow metrics than today. So it's a platform for the right ideas.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm too much of a purist. For the record, I am a diehard Reinertsen fan when it comes to the cost of delay stuff. It's one of the conclusions of our DICA paper that most people don't realize is that it was the first result that we came across, was that if it's a big if, but if you have the information that Don Reinertsen talks about for cost of delay, CD3 is by far and away the best approach. I mean, it's not even close. Yeah, but the thing is, and this is, I think, what you were talking about, Yuval, if you don't have that information, if it's too hard to get, if it's impractical to get, now what do we do? And that's I guess where my problem with Saif is, if I can state it this way. I don't know, maybe it's not a problem. It's where it makes me uncomfortable. Maybe I'll say it that way. It makes me uncomfortable. It is okay, because Don Reinertsen actually talks about this in his, I'm pointing, you can't see my bookshelf, but I'm pointing, it's on my bookshelf. Don Reinertsen talks about this in his Principles of Product Development Flow, is weighted shortest job first is an algorithm. It's up to you how you want to implement that algorithm. That's completely up to you. And so SAFe came along and they said, hey, this is our weighted shortest job first algorithm. Great. I think that's great. Don't call that cost of delay, because it's not cost of delay. It's just not. And it's okay that it's not. You know, I mean, it's perfectly fine that it's not, but don't try and make it something that it's not, because I think it confuses the conversation. It's those types of things that drive me nuts. You know,
bottom line, you're a purist.
Well, yeah, but I mean, because I don't think it's good enough to say,
That's a good thing, probably.
I don't, because I like I said, because we can talk about flow efficiency, we can talk about some of these other things. I don't think it's a good thing to be talking about the right thing, but talking about it in the wrong way, and that's how you get story points, that's I guess what I'm worried about. Prateek, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say was Yuval, you're absolutely right. I think the more and more people are aware of weighted shortest job first and cost of delay type calculations than they were before. But it does seem like most metrics take a J curve when introduced into SAFe, where the initial thing is, okay, we're not exactly doing this, but we're going down in the understanding of it, and eventually we're going to chisel our way back up towards the more purest definition of it, and that's exactly what we were talking about earlier as well with the flow metrics. But we've started, good thing, we've started with this, people are now aware of it, but we've kind of dug down a little bit, and now we need to start chiseling our way back up. So my hope is that happens more and more.
Yeah. And why do we constantly change names? Why are we constantly changing names of these things? It's like,
well, where the flow metrics in SAFe are coming from. It's not because people are reading the Kanban guide or the Scrum with Kanban guide. It's
I didn't want to go there.
Project to product is where they're bringing these flow metrics from. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I know. I know. I didn't want to go there, but anyway. But okay. So that's what I'm saying. I'm trying.
Maybe what we should be doing, rather than is talk to Mick about the one unified way to look at flow metrics. Yeah. Maybe that's what we should be doing.
Maybe.
Maybe not.
Maybe, yeah, I mean, I would be open to the conversation. I'm not sure how many other people would be, but I'd certainly be.
Anyway. On Drunk Agile.
Actually, we'll probably get Dominica on first. We should probably get Dominica on first and talk to her. Yeah. That would be a good one. We should reach out to Dominica for sure.
Yeah.
So you guys want to flip a coin? Who gets the last word? Who wants to wrap things up for us? I guess Yuval, you're our guest, so you should probably have the last word before we hand it over to Nisha.
I don't have any last words.
Oh.
Done with all my words for today.
Prateek, can you wrap things up for us?
Again, I am pretty sure this episode is going to conflict a lot of our viewers. I'm pretty sure we're going to see. I'm hoping to see some very interesting comments. But again, as you all stated right at the beginning, we're talking about how do we bring all these things kind of together and have them all move forward together or learn from each other. And that's really what this conversation is about. How do we bring Scrum, SAFe, Kanban all kind of at a point where we can learn from each other a lot more?
Yeah. And I think that's a beautiful way to wrap it up. As much as I'm going to put words in Prateek's mouth, as much as we like to complain about this stuff, we're much more interested in the conversation rather than depends how drunk we are.
I was going to say, depends on how much alcohol.
Stay tuned for the next episode to hear all the complaining.
Yeah, because it's all built up now, right? We didn't get it out in this one. We weren't able to get out of this one. So the next one, we're just going to go.
Yes, the outtakes, the real subscribers get some of the outtakes, right?
Right, yep. Okay, so for Yuval, thank you so much for joining us. For Prateek, and of course, the ever-present Nisha.
Dreaming.
I think she's dreaming. She is. She's chasing a rabbit or something. Yeah. For the ever-present Nisha, thank you everybody for watching, and we will see you in the next episode. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.